What's up, everybody? It's your favorite Lord of the Things, favorite nerd, and today we are looking at the Mythic Legions line. Now, this was sent to me by Death Star, and shout out to that dude. He even sent like a little sheet, like a little cheat sheet. It has all sorts of information about this. So, just to give a little bit of background information, they were funded through Kickstarter, which is like a crowd, what do they call it, crowdfunding sort of site, and it was a very successful toy funding venture. It was, I think, the most successful of its time, possibly still the most successful. These characters were designed by the Four Horsemen. They have links to Mattel and the He-Man line and all sorts of other stuff. They cost about $35 a piece. We'll talk about that a bit more. They're not based on any kind of canon or any sort of fiction prior to the toy line. They're just to kind of give 6-inch representations of the classic fantasy themes. All the limbs and stuff are interchangeable to an extent, like the gauntlets and so forth. I'm not going to mess with his stuff because I don't want to cause any damage to it, but they're designed so that you can customize your own collection to an extent. And I don't think we need to say too much more about it. Let's get started. So we'll start with this dwarf here, and his name is Both-R Shadowhorn. He does hold his accessory, however, it wasn't easy to get in this hand, and I didn't want to press my luck and try to put extra stress on this hand, so that's a bit of a bummer. They also do come with more accessories than we have here, some minor ones, but he didn't send those along as for me to keep track of less and so forth, so we'll just go with what we got. So there's some paint mishaps here with the silver, and the rest has this copper finish, and the copper finish looks fantastic across the board, and it's tons of sculpt work. We got different designs, reversed here, and then a different design here, a different design there, and it does work really well, and it is a very cool and imposing looking accessory. Let's talk about this guy. We have this head, which is on a ball joint. It's a massive ball joint, so it allows you to get a little bit more movement given the size of all the stuff here between the horns and the beard and whatnot. The beard has a dark wash on it, and it looks really good. It brings out all those little strands quite well. They could have gone an extra mile. Like, this is probably supposed to indicate that it's just another braid down here. They could have painted that and it would have looked even better, but as it is, it still looks fantastic. Silver ends, copper finish here, as well as the black, and then we have the horns, which just look like they're airbrushed instead of washed, and I think washing would have been easier, more or less expensive, and looked better ultimately at the end, but still fairly well. Articulation still a bit limited, up to there, down to there, and then you get the side to side. So it's fine given what it is. If you could take the helmet off, you could do a little bit more things with it. It would probably give for a much more playable figure, but it's not bad. This silver finish that's kind of on here, I don't think it's a paint. I think it's just the type of plastic they use, but it is cool. And then all the copper detailings are painted on there. Some are done better than others throughout. I've noticed like there's bleeding off and stuff. It's not the most. It's like a step up from what you would get in regular retail, but not quite as sharp and precise as what we see in a lot of our import stuff. Is kind of where I would put it. Articulation wise, you got a disc hinge there, and the chainmail here is washed, so that looks really good. It's a nice sculpt there too. There's tons of sculpt work, tons of like line work all throughout this thing. On the chainmail, on the little designs in the armor and stuff, all throughout. So that's all really, really cool, really well done. So that gets you out to there, and then the swivel. You don't have a bicep swivel, but you do have an elbow swivel, so that kind of works. And then you have the elbow, which is a single hinge and gets you barely anything. And then you have a wrist swivel as well. And then an additional wrist swivel and a wrist hinge in and out. Same for this side. The only difference is you have this extra piece of plastic, which is not connected in the front, but it is connected in the back on this peg, but it looks flawless, like it looks seamless, so that's cool, and it does, swivel, so to speak, on that peg, so you can get a little bit more range out of it. Some of the joints, there is some joint inconsistencies throughout. Some are a little tight, some move the way you want, and then some are a little loose, not necessarily on him, but on the three of them. Ball joint for the waist, so you get the swivel and you get a bit of a crunch forward and back, so that works fairly well, I think. It's a soft plastic piece here. It's not, is it floating? Yeah, it's floating, but it looks good, and it has some paint on it, so that's cool. We got disc hinges, like universal joints for hips, which is something interesting that we don't see all the time. So you get out to there, it's a great range. Forward to there, it pushes right through the center of these softer pieces, and the softer pieces get out of the way to add for the rest, so that's great. Single hinged knee, which gets you a great range, just about 90 degrees, so that's cool. And you know, if this could have moved, that would have been even better, like just to hide that, but it's fine. And then down here we have this ball hinge. It swivels at the top, it swivels and then it rocks at the bottom, so you get the ankle rocker all the way, and then you get an ankle tilt up to there, down to there. So that's this guy in a nutshell. The articulation is kind of a mixed bag, but overall I think it's fairly efficient. Plus dwarves aren't exactly, you know, known to be the most flexible or whatever, so extreme positions don't really cater to their characters. And then we have Urku the orc, and he comes with this sword. Once again, I had a hard time getting it into his hand, and I'm also a little gun shy ever since the Play Arts Kai Wonder Woman incident, but we'll talk about it. It has a wash on it and it's kind of put on willy-nilly, so it gives it a dirty look, and I think that works really well. Otherwise, interesting sculpt, and tons of sculpted detail, so that's good. We'll talk about this guy detail-wise. There is airbrush shading, it looks like to me. It might be a wash, but it looks like to me it's airbrush shading on the flesh tones. And there's a wash on the leather, like that's not real leather, but the leather looking pieces. And then there's the same wash that we see on the sword on the armor. And those are pretty much consistent throughout. Alright, so we'll talk about the figure articulation wise now. Single ball peg again, up to there, down to there, swivels, so that's fine. Interesting sculpt. Once again, don't think you can take the helmet off, but I would have preferred if you could. But not a lot of that option. For all the other options they want to give you, which I would not be interested in, you're not allowed the option that I would be interested in. But it is a separate piece that's glued on, so at least it gives it a realistic look, so that's cool. Once again, we got disc hinge shoulders, it gets you up to there, and then the swivel, and that's fine. Same sort of engineering for the shoulder plate, so it's on the back, so it looks seamless on the front, and it does get out of the way a fair bit, so that works pretty well too. No bicep swivel once again on a I don't know. I feel like they could have put one in there. You get the elbow swivel, so that's fine, but you don't get the full range on the elbow, so that's not exactly great. Swivel at the wrist, hinge at the wrist, so that works all fairly well. And the proportions are fantastic. Like, he is a very well proportioned figure in terms of anatomy. Same articulation for the other side. And did I say there's like 2 wrist swivels? If not, I'm doing it now. There's like one there and then one there. Not that they would really help you, but I'm just pointing it out. You got a soft floating piece here on his like a strap, and then you have this soft floating piece here that once again we talked about, but then it also has this gold painted on there, this copper wash painted on there, this skull which is too heavily wash painted on there, and then the silver and gold detailings down here at the bottom. And the dry brushing could have been done to this fur. It would have really made it pop, but that's not there. The hips, we're going to talk about this a bit. So the same sort of hits, they're like universal joints, but they're a little loose, a little too loose for my liking. But articulation is great range-wise. Up to there, you already saw the out. Back to there. Thigh swivel built into the... Oh, it's a separate piece. So the thigh sits on this separate piece here, but it's pretty seamless, especially with these straps and stuff, so that's pretty cool. Single jointed knee. I think they could have really put a double in there, but it still works fair enough. Little shy of 90 degrees, maybe. It might be 90. We'll give it to them. And then the same sort of ankle joints that we saw on the dwarf, these ball hinges. So you get the swivel, you get the ankle tilt down and up, and then when you swivel it at the bottom, it rocks. So to speak. It's not like it's like, yeah, it rocks. It's just that it becomes an ankle rocker. There you go. And then lastly is Scapular, the Crypt Breaker, which is a play on scapula, I guess. Looks like he could have a backpack that's not here, but we'll work with what we have. Accessory-wise, he comes with this shield. It plugs in here. This can also clip off and just be removed entirely. And then the spear, which was the easiest thing to get into the hand and still not incredibly easy. This just has a finish, and I'm guessing this is from sliding it in and out here. Not totally sure. And this actually sculpt wise is the least impressive. This on the other hand is really, really well done. You got the stars, the stripes on the other side. This line could be a little bit more crisp down the center here. You got the aged wash look around the corners of the armor, and then the paint. It looks like paint to me on the borders. It looks really nice. It's a really well done shield. We'll get that out of the way. Detailings here, it looks like it's just this yellow paint, or gold paint rather, on the silver, and this one is done much more sharp than the dwarf overall. It's not perfect, but it is slightly better. And then it looks like to me an airbrushing paint for the shading of the red, which looks tremendous, absolutely tremendous. And then we have a wash. It looks like on the skull as well, to give a bit of depth and texture there. So that looks good. Looks good. So let's talk about them. Head is on a ball peg. I mean, again, it's just a single ball peg. You get down to there, up to there, and then side to side. We got the same details we already talked about. Great sculpt on the skull. You know, I have a special little place in my heart for skulls, of course. And then we have this floating piece here. It's a softer plastic. Something's been going on with the mic on my camera recently. I don't know what it is, but it's causing like a horrible static sound every now and then. You may have heard it from time to time. So I had to do redubs. But basically what I'm talking about here is there's this shoulder piece of armor that sits on top of the humerus. In order to get it over the tunic, in order to get the full articulation of the arm, you need to kind of turn it to the back, flip it over the tunic in the back where you can get the clearance, and then flip it around to the top in order to get the full range. And that's on that ball hinge shoulder that we've seen before. That armor piece is a softer plastic. It is glued down, but it does have a lip that's available. You had the bicep swivel at the elbow like before, and the elbow gets you a little less than 90 degrees. But the bone structure, I want to reiterate, is sturdy. A lot of times with skeleton figures, they have those weaker, kind of thinner, smaller framed bones. These are sturdy enough where it perfectly holds the weight of the figure. So there's also the same gauntlet thing. It rotates at the gauntlet and then at the wrist, and then a hinge in and out, as we've kind of come to expect with this line. The things hanging off the hips are a soft floating piece of plastic. It hides a lot of the frame and the sculpt of the figure, which is relatively unsightly. Like if you look underneath, like there, then you can see it's like stupid looking. But because of those pieces and the way they sit, it does hide it very well. It does have the universal hip joints, which because of the soft plastic pieces get a full range, and because of the cut between the softer plastic pieces, you can get it all the way up as well. So that's a nice little engineering thing. Thigh swivel? Nope. You do get a knee swivel though, so that kind of works. And then you get a single hinge knee, getting you 90 degrees. And then the same sort of ankles that we've seen, these ball hinges. Down to there, up to there, and then rock. And that's this guy. And there they are next to a Marvel Legends Spider-Man. So as you can see, they're slightly taller. I mean, orcs are bigger. I don't know what the hero, quote-unquote, character is like size-wise. But they're beefier characters kind of across the board. So you are getting a little bit more for your money. Final thoughts-wise, they're cool. I don't know if I can say they're $35 cool, but they're cool. We'll talk about the good, we'll talk about the bad. So the bad is...
Are they as bad as your audio issues?
You're lucky that I'm generally a nightmare to live with and would never probably be able to find anyone else who could tolerate me.
The articulation is a little weird. Some things work a lot better than what we're used to on kind of the modern day playing field. Other things don't work as effectively. The shoulders, the elbows, the heads, they all kind of suffer from limited articulation, whereas the hips and ankles kind of give us more articulation than what we're used to. So both those things have to be taken into account. The paint is very ambitious, and for the most part, given the amount of paint that's on these, it's very well done. However, when it does go off the reservation, it certainly does go off, and it's not clean and precise throughout. That's not really something to not buy the figure for, because it is pretty good, and you'll never notice it on a shelf. It's just when you get up close and really look at it, but it's something that they could stand to work on in the future. My biggest gripe for these guys are the accessories and the fact that it's not easy to get them to hold them. I found it very frustrating, and I was very scared to get the weapons in there without causing damage to either the weapon or the figure. Certainly not something I want to do on an expensive figure that I'm not totally interested in for my personal collection that's on loan to me from someone else, you know? And then lastly, the one thing I always have to mention is just the lack of connection to the source material, given that there is no source material. For me, like, I think there are collectors out there that just like cool toys, and that's awesome, but I'm not one of them. I'm a collector that likes cool toys of things that I think are cool. And it's not that I don't think dwarves and orcs and skeletons are cool. I do. I'm just saying, if I wanted highly articulated, detailed 6-inch figures of those sorts of characters, I would wish they were just Lord of the Rings or Game of the Thrones, listen to me, Game of Thrones, or whatever the case may be, something that I have a license attachment to. But I understand the problems that come along with that as well, so I totally respect what they're doing here. Let's talk about the positives. The positives, I love that hip universal joint, especially when it works smoothly, which it doesn't always do, but I do love it when it does. The paint, I love the ambitious level of the paint, and for the most part, I love 90% of its application, maybe 85%. But there's really great stuff done with paint to make these characters look a whole lot more interesting than what they are at their base, right? Like a skeleton in armor isn't as interesting as this particular skeleton in armor because it has enough detail to make it look interesting, is what I'm trying to say. The materials feel good, however, I have to admit they're giving off a slight odor, like, and don't you guys make any comments about my boy Death Star. It's not like a house odor. Like, I can smell that as well, but it's not a house odor. It's more like a... You guys remember when McFarlane toys first started dropping and they had that strong odor to them? It's along those lines. It's not as potent as that McFarlane stuff was, but it is along those lines, which is just kind of off-putting. But the sculpt work is great. The articulation is fair. The paint is really well done given the amount that's on them. I think that, like, if you're a toy connoisseur, it'd definitely be worth picking these up. If you were interested in them, I can say that they're worth getting. I would recommend them. If you're not interested in them, I don't know if there's anything about them that would make you interested in them, but they are cool figures for the most part, and they are pretty well done. Price point's a little high, but that's the problem of being an independent company and trying to fund through the people. I do want to applaud the 4 horsemen for taking that leap. You know, that requires a certain amount of bravery to take that leap to get people to fund your project that's completely independent and kind of challenge the other companies that are out there. And I definitely dig stuff like that. I love grassroots stuff. Whether or not I can get behind it or not, it doesn't mean that I don't appreciate and applaud the efforts. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.